Chris Fenton is here to talk about why nobody even points out the double standard anymore. But we start with Kelly Meyer in Washington with then candidate Biden's decision, or promise, we should say, to turn Saudi Arabia into a pariah state. That's clearly changed, Kelly.
Yeah, that's right, Leland. That's what we're watching here today. President Biden, as you said, promised on the campaign trail to make Saudi Arabia a pariah on the world stage after the brutal killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, which the U.S. intelligence found came at the command of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS. Fast forward 3 years later, Biden will not only visit, but will meet face-to-face with MBS. Here's that clip that we're talking about.
We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are.
There was some confusion here at the White House on whether the two would meet. The White House leaving his name off the announcement today and saying the two would, quote, see one another. The Saudi announcement today saying they would hold official talks. Leland?
All right, so President Biden also is going back on his word to boost Saudi oil production. Unlikely to be enough to bring these unprecedented prices down. Do they not want to make this trip about oil? I'm trying to understand the connection.
Well, it's a mix, and we just heard from John Kirby earlier saying that, you know, that this isn't just about the oil announcement, that there are other things they're trying to accomplish here. But the big question here is, will this make a difference from Saudi Arabia back to your gas station? Experts say it's unlikely, and critics say Biden is just playing politics.
Going to Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, pleading with communists and human rights violators to bail him out of a problem that he caused.
And as we mentioned, White House official John Kirby telling us here tonight that lowering the cost isn't the only goal of this, and that this trip was planned for months prior to the jump in prices. Leland?
Right, the trip that was planned in months that they denied ever planning and said wasn't decided about whether or not they were going to meet with the Crown Prince, but it was planned for months. Okay, Kelly, thank you very much. Chris Fenton with us now, author Feeding the Dragon, Inside the Trillion-Dollar Dilemma Facing Hollywood, the NBA, and American Business, which all comes back to China. Should we even be ashamed of the double standard anymore?
Well, look, I mean, we're well aware of it. I'm wearing my kid's American high school sweatshirt in honor of the fact that Eileen went to an American high school. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm an American citizen. And quite frankly, I think it's a really interesting dilemma when you're looking at the fact that the leadership of our country is supposed to lead by example in regards to the engagement with either Saudi Arabia or China. And it's sort of business as usual. So if you look at the way celebrities or various entities of corporate interests, et cetera, are behaving underneath that leadership, they're just doing what looks like it's okay to do. And that's where the problem is. We really need to set the ground rules of how this works.
Do we need to set the ground rules, though, with the media first? And how do you set the ground rules with a media that refuses to aggressively cover one side of this story? Here's Eileen Gu saying she doesn't regret her decision. Can you imagine that kind of question even passing if somebody was in the same situation with Saudi Arabia?
No, not at all. I mean, there's definitely a double standard. And quite frankly, I would have loved to see the next question be, well, if Beijing wanted to host another Winter Olympics in 2030 or 2034, as well as Salt Lake City, which side would you be on as far as an ambassador is concerned?
Well, right. Or what does it say that you're wearing clothing and sponsored by a company that uses child labor? How can you say that you support a global world order and a sense of globalism and play by the rules? Am I too cynical to think that the reason this double standard exists is solely because of how much the Chinese control the U.S. media?
Well, controlling the U.S. media is actually a really important topic, because if you look at the way the announcement that she made at that Time Magazine forum was covered in China, whether it's the South China Morning Post or the Global Times, which is a propaganda piece of the Chinese Communist Party, they actually touted the fact that she was an ambassador for the Salt Lake City Games. And they bragged about the fact that 220 million Chinese citizens came out in support of that move by her on Weibo. And why would they tout that? Why would they say that's something they want to give her a pat on the back for? And I think it's because they're looking at her, showcasing herself as a Chinese citizen that has competed for China and is now going to be coming to the U.S. to help the U.S. get something done that the U.S. wants to get done. It essentially puts a powerful position behind China ahead of the U.S. when she's in fact a U.S. citizen. She was born and raised here, which is really sort of a crazy propaganda play that the Chinese Communist Party is doing. And I feel for her because she's only 18 years old. She is not the only one that's sort of running this puppeteering.
Right, but she's 18 years old and making decisions about where to go to college and what to wear and how much she's willing to sell out. Typically, you'd think of anybody, it would be young teenagers and younger people who'd be willing to make a stand on principle rather than take advantage solely for the money. Does anything change this? Is there something that happens that the Chinese do that so offends the conscience of reporters and of newsrooms that they have to then apply this kind of Saudi scrutiny to the Chinese?
Well, what's going to happen is, number one, is if oil goes down in price, and quite frankly, we don't need to chase it as much as we are right now, that's going to change the dialogue. And then the second thing that's going to happen is as the market of China turns more and more inward, and we see our products and services not selling as well in that market anymore, the risk-reward calculus is no longer going to be as clean. So you're going to see a stand up to China simply because the capitalism involved becomes diminished. So on both sides of the spectrum, whether it's Saudi or China, money drives the directive. And right now we're seeing the leverage in Saudi gain strength, which is allowing them to control a lot of the narrative. China's had the same leverage for the past 40 years, and it's starting to wane, and we're starting to see pushback, but it's very slow.
Can that pushback on China happen? Can the selective patriotism of Eileen Gu actually be called out and she can be held to account and made to pay a price for it, as a traitor should be? If you've got NBC, ABC, CBS, all with huge business interests inside of China. You've got the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, huge business interests inside of China. You got the New York Times that takes a lot of money from the communist regime as well.
Well, it's baby steps, but we're seeing it in action, whether it's Spider-Man not censoring the Statue of Liberty at the end of that movie, and that's obviously Sony. You also have Paramount, which refused to take off the Taiwanese patches from that flight jacket, so they put it back on for the film. And we even saw Disney take a stand and put the Epic Times newsstand in 2 of the shots in Doctor Strange. So we're seeing a pushback that is slowly getting through the system. But to actually see it in news versus just part of the conglomerate's pushback is going to take some time. But I'm very hopeful that it's going to get there. It's going to, because we're starting to see capitalism reward doing the right thing. I mean, we have movies doing $1 billion box office globally without China involved. And we're going to start to see that seep into other parts of other industries.
Great point about Top Gun. You certainly hope you start seeing it on a daily basis in terms of our reporting. Chris, it was good to see you as always. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We have some scary news for you. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.